Hi guys, Jordan here from Ferret Art Studios. Once again, we are taking a different approach onto my intros, and I am sitting here with Luna. She is my German Shepherd Husky mix, and yeah, I will be drawing her with just graphite and a little bit of charcoal and Conte. Um, I unfortunately really do not know what the paper is called. I uh, I just it's some leftovers from when I was in college, so it's been sitting there for a long time. Just really forgot what it was called, guys, so I'm really sorry, but in the future I will know my paper and what it's called. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. So I'm using a different paper this time. I'm not really a huge fan of this paper. I find that the tooth is just way too much for the style that or for the techniques that I use. I kind of like it when the paper is a little bit more, I don't even really know the word to describe it except for cloudy. Like it's kind of, it doesn't have a huge tooth on it. It's more of a kind of a smoother paper, but it's really good artist quality paper. Um, it's got some weight on it, which is good, and yeah, those are mostly the papers I like to work with rather than this one. But this was just some paper that I had left over from college, so I'm trying to use all of my resources and all of my materials that I had from before. Um, before I go out and buy some new stuff. Um, so yeah, that's why I'm using up this paper. Um, Overall, I find that it turned out very well, but I find that sometimes I like to use the smoother paper a lot. Well, not sometimes, I do like using the smoother paper a lot more. So since my subject has very dark values on her face, I kind of mostly work on my darkest values within my drawing first. I do kind of jump around a little bit to like my medium values while I'm drawing, but for the most part, right now I am trying to figure out where all of my darks are going. So even though that this dog has darker facial features than the other dog portrait that we did last week, um, I'm not going to jump straight to my B pencils because I first want to map things out with my 2H and 3H. Your H pencils, like I have mentioned before, are your harder leads, so they're kind of going to get into those grooves of the paper a lot easier than your softer leads, which will kind of like spread more like butter. But even when I do go into my B pencils, I'll do a couple layers of like 2B and 3B, and then I'll blend it out, and then I'll go back to my H pencils so I can get back into the grooves of the paper. And I want to stress, I am not pressing down on my paper hard at all. I am going very lightly, especially on this paper, because you do not want to damage, well, I guess on any paper, you just do not want to damage the tooth of the paper that you're working on, because if you damage the tooth, then when you go on for your next layer, it's not going to take well to your pencils or whatever medium that you're working in, and you're just not going to be able to layer anymore because the term is burnished. Sorry, words are hard tonight. Um, yeah, because you'll basically burnish, and that's when you've pressed so hard on the paper that it's basically like dented inwards. And yeah, that's basically what you don't want to do, unless if you're like on your very last layers, then it's appropriate to burnish. But when you're in these stages, when you want to continuously add layers, you do not want to press down hard at all. But you do want to use the tip of your pencil. That's why you'll see that I will like work a little bit with one side of the pencil and I'll just rotate it just a tiny bit, and then I'll work again, and then I'll rotate the pencil another tiny bit, work some more, and that's just to keep my point on my pencil fine until I am ready to sharpen my pencil and renew that really sharp tip again. And even though that this dog was a much darker subject, there was still parts in this drawing where I used Conte and used my erasers to really heighten up some light contrast within this drawing. And I used a lot of charcoal actually within her muzzle and around her eyes. Even though her nose is darker than her muzzle in real life, the reference photo that I took of her nose is extremely shiny because her nose is wet. So you have to kind of take in mind all of these shiny spots around her nose, and there's going to be a shine on each angle, so on each turn and bend of that nose there's a little bit of Conte just to heighten up that contrast just a little bit more. A really good way to make sure that your values are the right contrast that you want them to be at is to squint your eyes at your drawing, and if you're losing details in areas that you don't want to lose detail, that's where you know where you want to work. If you squint your eyes and you can still see a somewhat detailed photo, if you're going for realism that is, then you know that you're on the right track, and you could probably start doing just touch-ups at that point. Another good way to make sure that everything's situated how you want it to be is to set your easel somewhere across the room and walk as far away from it as you can and look back at it and sit there for maybe 5-10 minutes and just pick it apart. So with the neck, I haven't really worked on it much yet within this video, but I don't necessarily want a lot of focus in around that fur. I want more of the attention drawn into the face. So I'm not necessarily going to put as much time into making finer details in the fur rather than what I'm going to do on the cheeks and the muzzle and all around on the actual face. So what I'm just going to do is a few directional lines, and I'm going to blend that out, and then I'll just take one of my erasers, make a few more directional lines, and I will just kind of build up a little bit of just a tiny bit of a value in the neck, and then that's it. That's it for the neck, and I don't really have to worry about that much detail down there at all. You have probably noticed that I use a Kleenex a lot with my blending with this drawing, and I really think that using a Kleenex is fine for blending. I find that it gives kind of a very nice soft tone to the blending. It's not like the blending stump when the blending stumps, they kind of just swipe away all of the finer detail that you make. So that's kind of what I really like with the Kleenex. You kind of just brush over your graphite, and it kind of just, it doesn't smear it all away. It just kind of, well, it kind of just blends it into the paper. And then you can just take your eraser or whatever you're using for your white, your highlights. I usually use an eraser, and just make a few directional lines within that cluster of hair. I usually find that it's more defining to do the actual fur texture with the Kleenex rather than the blending stump. I find the blending stump is good for the nose and the ears, like inside the ears where it's skin. The eye I find is really good for the blending stump, but for the fur textures I find the Kleenex is a little bit more reliable. So when you're doing something that's realism, either it be a portrait or a swan on a pond or whatever, a landscape, make sure that you just observe your reference photo. Make sure that the contrast is right, the values. Make sure that the structure of your drawing is right to the reference photo. Make sure the eye is in the right position. What you do not need to worry about is how many hairs is on the dog, how many feathers is on the bird. All what you need to worry about is that it's all going in the same direction as your reference photo. I don't have the time to make sure that all those millions of hairs are right in the exact same spot on my drawing compared to the reference photo. That's insane. But just make sure that your highlights are in the right spot, that the direction is the same, and that your values are the same, and you will pretty much be. That's pretty much it, so I'm just gonna let the rest of this play out. So that is it for this week's video. I really hope you guys enjoyed. Our next video is going to be another acrylic painting, so I hope you guys tune in for that one. If you want to be notified for when that video is going to be uploaded, you can hit that subscribe button, and yeah, you will be notified exactly when that is posted. Besides that, I will leave a few links in the description for you. I will leave one for all the social media platforms that I'm on. And I will also put a link in for Pixabay for you guys, just because I think Pixabay is just a great website for artists. You can get a bunch of free pictures, and there is no there's no copyright issues, so you guys can just go ahead. You can make prints out of them as well. Not the actual picture, but you can draw, paint, sculpt the subject of that picture, and then you can make prints of those. But yeah, besides that, I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.